Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. A lot of people here, a lot more than I was expecting. But today we're going to talk about how to double your new patient flow. Practical strategies for how you can drive a lot more patients, things that you can do with your team inside of your office. This is not meant to be a sales pitch of, you don't need more marketing. You don't need a new website. A lot of dentists, they're constantly getting bombarded by people that, you need to do more social media, you need to change this and that, and you need to hire me for, to improve these things for you. But the reality is there's a lot of things that you can do internally with your own team to get a lot more patients. And, we're going to go over some of that stuff tonight. I'm going to show you specifically what the top dental practices are doing to drive a lot more patients than you might be driving, or that other dental practices are driving, and understanding like how you can become one of those top practices as well. So what are you going to learn today? What are we going to cover? Number one, understanding the value of a new patient and what it costs to acquire patients. This is something that it always really surprises me. Whenever I talk to dentists, they very rarely will someone actually understand sort of like the math behind it of how you calculate ROI, and what do you spend to get a patient? What is a patient worth? What do you stand to gain from the patient? Like the sort of the financial elements to it. So we're going to go over the basics because a lot of dentists I speak with, they've never actually learned about this stuff. In part two, we're going to cover what the top dental practices are doing to acquire more patients. So how are they different from your average practice? What are the things that they're doing differently? And I'll give you a bit of a spoiler. It's not your website. It's not your SEO. It's not your, it's not some external thing. Most offices out there, when they're trying to attract patients, they're constantly looking for an external solution to what is virtually almost always an internal problem. And we'll talk about in part three what you need to be tracking, and improving to become a top practice yourself. So before we get into it, I just want to give you a bit of a background on sort of who we are and how we got here. So my background originally is in IT, and I ran an IT company for many years. I ended up working with a lot of different dentists. And in 2013, I opened a digital marketing agency. We were building websites, doing marketing for dental offices. And in around 2018, we switched our focus exclusively to dentists, because before we were working with, lawyers and car dealerships, engineering firms, like all kinds of different companies. But in 2018, we realized dentistry was what we really wanted to put our attention towards, mostly because it was the industry that we felt was furthest behind with the rest of the world. It was the easiest to help. It was the one with the simplest problems to fix. And generally what I kind of enjoyed with dentistry is that they're not salesy. They're not focused on just trying to make as much money as possible. I mean, most dentists I've talked to, they genuinely, they want to help their patients. They want to do a good thing in this world. Obviously they want to have a successful business, but their primary motivation isn't to just make a bunch of money. So we felt that sort of line of thinking was more in line with how we thought as a business, and we sort of like connected really well with that industry. But once we started working with dentists exclusively, and we started getting dozens and later hundreds of clients, we started to realize pretty quickly that marketing is not really what's holding most offices back. The reason you're getting 10 patients a month and not 20, 30, 40, 50 is highly unlikely that it's your website or your SEO or your flyers or any of that nonsense. I mean, a website at the end of the day, it's just a tool. Like imagine if I gave you, the same golf clubs that Tiger Woods uses. Would you be just as good of a golfer? No, obviously not, right? If you're competing with like Tiger Woods, Serena Williams, at their sport, I can give them the cheapest set of golf clubs from Walmart or Value Village, and I can give you the most expensive ones in the world. It's not really going to make that big of a difference. So your website and a lot of the things that dentists think is what's going to set them apart has about as much impact as if, you got a new chandelier in your office or a new set of carpets. I mean, maybe it's going to have a little bit of an impact, but not as much as you would think. So later, what we ended up changing from a marketing company, we ended up switching towards building a product to better understand what was going on in dental offices day to day. Like, what were their internal issues? Like, what do we really need to fix to actually get the needle to move? So because we've done a lot of marketing, and pretty much every client we've ever worked with, we were never the first marketing company they called. Usually when we worked with the dentist, we were, they worked with maybe half a dozen other companies before us, all of which have, sort of like failed to deliver results. And the problem we kept hearing again and again, the way I can sort of summarize what the issue is with dental marketing is, you're paying real money every month, right? Like, let's say you hire a company to do your SEO or you build a website. You pay them with real dollars, but you end up at the end of the day kind of just getting monopoly money back, right? And what I mean by monopoly money is every dentist we would work with, they would show us these reports that their marketing company gave them. Hey, Dr. John, last month we got you 500 website clicks. Your Facebook page got, 50 extra likes this week. Metrics that don't really have any value. And this happened to me as well. When I started my first IT business, I hired a bunch of companies, I spent a lot of money on marketing, and, I got all these reports that look really impressive, but I'm not really seeing a lot of customers. So if you're working with a marketing company, chances are you're probably dealing with this too. So when I ran into this problem with my business, I would go back to those companies and say, like, guys, listen, every month when I pay you $500, $1,000, whatever it is, you can go home and you can buy groceries with that. You can pay your rent, you can pay your staff. When you give me a report on website clicks, I can't do anything with that, right? Like, can I pay your invoice next month with website clicks? No, probably not, right? Can I put food on the table with impressions on my ad? No. Like, if I'm spending money, I need that money to turn into opportunities, like a return on investment. I need to make sure $1 turns into $5, $10, $15, or else, I'm going to be out of business. So this is what I want to sort of talk to you guys about, is like, what do you really need to be tracking to see if things are moving in the right direction? And just sort of like stop searching for that external solution, because chances are, if you want to double your patient flow, you actually have to look internally, not externally. So let's start with the basics. So what is the value of a new patient? Before we figure out what we need to do to attract patients or what we can afford to spend, we need to understand, what do you stand to gain if you sign up a new patient? And this is one of the things that always sort of surprised me. Like, a lot of dentists never really thought about this. Whenever I would ask them, what's the average value of a new patient for you? What's the lifetime customer value? 9 out of 10 of them would say, like, I have no idea what you mean. So we'll start from the top. When a new patient calls your practice, right? Most of them are going to come in for X-ray checkup and a cleaning, right? Now, there's going to be the occasional person that comes in and they just, they have an emergency situation. You do the extraction, you do the filling, whatever it is, and then you never see them again. But for the most part, that's not the average patient, right? If that was, most of the dentists here would be out of business if that was the case. Most people will come in and they'll do some sort of a new patient exam. And generally, in Ontario, that ranges between maybe, $400 to $600, somewhere around there. 60 to 80% of the time, you're going to find that patient probably needs some additional dental work, right? It's pretty rare that you're going to do an exam on somebody and conclude that their teeth are perfect and there's nothing you can do for them and, they're good to go. That will happen sometimes, but generally speaking, if a person hasn't been to a dentist in a couple of years, they probably need a couple things before they're good to go. Now, that can vary wildly. They might need a filling or two. They might need an extraction. They might need a crown. They might need an implant. But from talking to hundreds of dentists, from analyzing their patient management systems and looking at, how much patients tend to spend in that first, week, month, that initial sort of visit, the average person is probably going to spend about $1,000 to $2,000. Of course, it varies on a lot of things, but that's generally kind of the ballpark. After you do that initial dental work for them, most of them are going to keep coming back, right? They're going to come back, 2 to 4 times a year for hygiene. Most people will come twice a year. But whenever I ask dentists, like, is it unheard of for somebody to come 3 times a year? Is that like nobody's ever done that? Most of them will say, like, no, 15, 20%, maybe 30%. Yeah, they'll come 3 times a year if they have insurance, if, we educate them on why it's important. Twice a year is the minimum, but if you really want to be on top of your oral health, we recommend 3. And there's a lot of practices that will get people to come back 3 times a year. The occasional person, 5-10% might even come 4 times a year. So average is kind of like 2.5, 2.7, somewhere around there. And usually each visit is going to be maybe $200 to $300 for a cleaning. Most patients are going to stay with you for 5-10 years and up. In Ontario, from talking to different dental brokers like Roy Corp, Tier 3, and like the accountants, average practice is going to see maybe 5 to 8% attrition a year, which means that if you sign up 100 patients today, in 10 years, you'll probably still have 40 to 60 of them will still be your patients. So patients typically, it's not a restaurant. Like if I come to your practice, as long as I don't move from that area, I'm probably going to still keep coming to you for a very long time. And generally, after the first year, a patient is probably going to spend, on average, maybe $700 to $1,000 a year, because you have to figure in, they might spend a little bit less, but then year 3, they might get Invisalign, or they might get, implants or something along those lines. A lot of people calling, maybe 50% of them, are probably going to be families. This ranges a lot depending on where your practice is located. So if you're in Toronto, you're going to get a lot more young professionals. You're going to get people who, they're single. They might only be with you for 2-3 years before they get a promotion. They move somewhere else. But on the flip side, there's always a flow of new patients coming through. So it's easier to sign up patients. In smaller towns, you might have, it might be harder to sign up patients because most people there probably already have a dentist. But if you do get somebody, they're probably going to be with you for 10-15 years, right? So I would say on average, maybe 50% of the people calling you, it's not actually one patient. It's probably going to be husband, wife, husband, wife, and kid, husband, wife, 2 kids, maybe a grandparent or something like that. So each call, each opportunity could actually transform into quite a few more patients for you. And there's a % chance that every year, these patients are going to refer friends and family to you. Like most offices, let's say they have, 1,000 active patients. They might sign up 100 new patients that year, and most of them are probably going to be referral and word of mouth, unless they're doing they're doing a lot of marketing. A lot of them, usually the main driver of new patients is referrals and word of mouth. So obviously there's a good chance they're going to refer someone to you. The better of a job you do for them, the better you treat them, obviously the higher that percentage is going to be. But the moral of the story is each new patient's actually worth a lot of money if you think about it in the long run. Okay, so they might come in for a checkup and a cleaning, but if you look at your patient management system and you look at what does the average patient spend with me and how long do they spend with me, they will spend a lot. It adds up significantly. According to the ADA, and we can sort of back up these numbers with what we've seen, average person is probably going to spend $5,000 to $8,000 in production, and that's not even factoring in that it's a family with multiple patients. It doesn't factor in that they might refer people to you or, drive business in other ways, so they're worth quite a bit. So the next component is, if that's the case, then what does it cost to get a new patient then? How much money do we have to throw at, marketing, activity, whatever we're trying to do to acquire a patient? Like, how much does it cost for us to get a patient? I can tell you in 2022, from monitoring hundreds of dental offices in US and Canada, and we listen to their calls, we track their analytics, their financials, the average practice spends about $281.15 to get a new patient. Now, what do I mean by that? Like, where are they spending this? I'm factoring in what they spend for marketing, and a lot of them work with other marketing agencies, or we track them, no matter whether they work with us or somebody else, what it costs to build their website, what they're spending on Google, what they're spending on Facebook, what they're spending on flyers, like everything that goes into any kind of activity to try to get a patient. So when we take all of that and we divide it by how many new patients did they actually get, patients that weren't word of mouth, they weren't referrals, they were purely, I found you on a flyer, I Googled you, I found your website, I liked your reviews, I decided to call you. The average practice in 2022, and this is analyzing hundreds of thousands of new patient calls, spends $281.15. But here's where it gets really interesting. The top 10% of these practices are acquiring patients for $53.92. Okay. And the bottom 10% spend almost $1,000 to get a patient. Okay. So huge difference, right? from the average to the top, you're talking 2.5 times, a little bit more than that, right? And pretty significant from the bottom 10% to the top 10%. Another way to look at it is the average practice, if they spend $2,000 a month on marketing, whether that's flyers, Facebook, social media, like irrelevant, okay? They'll typically get maybe 7 new patients out of that. Now, 7 meaning that purely these people came from marketing. It wasn't a referral, wasn't, somebody walking past the practice, they saw the sign. Dollar in, they got, $2,000 in, they got 7 new patients directly from that activity. But the top 10% of practices, if they spend $2,000 on marketing, they'll get 37 patients out of it on average, okay? And the bottom 10% will spend $2,000 a month, and they might only get 2 or 3 new patients. And generally, the bottom 10% will think, my marketing company sucks, okay? We often would take over marketing for dental practices, when we're like the 3rd company that they worked with, only to realize like, your last 2-3 marketing companies were actually really good. They did a very good job for you. The problem wasn't the marketing, it was something very different. So that leads me to, what separates the top 10% from the rest? What are they doing? Are they just lucky? Are they, they're in the right place at the right time? Is it their website? Is it their SEO? Like what's actually separating them? Number one, it's not the area. And this is what we thought it would be as well, right? Like maybe they're in a very competitive area. They're in downtown Chicago or Toronto. It's tougher over there, and other practices like the middle of nowhere, and there's no dentists out there. It really wasn't the area. We didn't really find a strong correlation between that. Like the practices in the top 10% of all of our clients, some of them are downtown in big cities with millions of people. Some of them are in the middle of nowhere. It didn't really have that big of an impact. It obviously has some impact. I'm not saying it's zero, but it's not as significant as we thought it was. And the data sort of backed this up. When we started working with more and more dentists and collecting more and more data, it became apparent that's not really the correlation. It also really wasn't the competition. We thought it might have something to do with, maybe this dentist is in an area with 50 other dentists and, there's just too much competition. And obviously competition has some impact. I'm not saying it's zero, but it wasn't as high as we thought, because there were offices in that top 10% pool that, had very few competitors or a ton of competitors, and they were still doing well. And meanwhile, we had in the bottom 10%, there were clients who have barely almost no dentists around them, and they're still struggling. It's not their website. And you probably won't appreciate the irony of this, but we spent millions of dollars building websites for years. We built great websites, and it didn't really change all that much. Again, it's like if I give you a new set of golf clubs, it's not going to magically make you better at golf. It might help a little bit. Probably most of it is a placebo, but a patient isn't going to decide to come to you because you have a really nice banner on your website, or they really like the color scheme. I mean, it's going to have about as much impact as if you changed your furniture or your decor. Yeah, it'll help a little bit, but it's not that significant. And it's not really their marketing. Some of the clients in the top 10%, they're not that sophisticated. They don't have great SEO. They don't, they might be doing flyers or really old marketing. And meanwhile, the clients in the bottom 10% could be, doing social media and Instagram and TikTok and all this nonsense, and doesn't really change much for them. The number one reason we found the strongest correlation, because obviously all the things that I mentioned have some impact to some degree, but the number one reason that separates the people that are getting patients for $53 and the people getting patients for $800 is how the staff talk to those patients. What we were shocked to find when we started tracking this data, like recording calls, listening to calls, trying to figure out, how many new patients called, how many of them were actually booked, who talked to them, like what happened on the phone. We found that the average practice in 2022 booked 42.9% of calls into new patient calls into appointments. Now, this is all of the clients. If I look at clients who, let's say we signed up with them today, and we started tracking what's going on today, the average practice at the start is usually about maybe 33.5%, meaning they need to get 3 new patients calling before they can successfully book one for an appointment. The top 10% of practices in 2022, and this is hundreds of thousands of patient calls. Like we monitor about 50 to 60,000 new patient calls a month. The top 10% will book 75.6% as of this year, right? So they get 10 people calling, they'll book 7 to 8 patients. The average practice will book maybe 4. The bottom 10%, it will book about 22.5%. So it takes about 4 to 5 new patient calls before they can get one person in the door. Now, why is that? The common assumptions, right, when we talk to the dentist, when we talk to their staff, and we show them, like, look, there's a lot of people calling, but you don't seem to be booking them. What's going on? Number one complaint every staff member, every office manager, practically every dentist says to us, oh, they're price shopping. And I used to agree with them, right? Like we would listen to these calls and a person would call in and they would say, you know, hi, do you guys do dental implants? Like, yeah, absolutely, we do. How much do you guys charge, right? So you think, obviously they're price shopping, right? But as we started working with more dentists, and you know, there was one dentist in particular that was doing really well. They were booking a lot of new patient calls, and somehow this came up in conversation, and he said something to me that really kind of burned into my head, and I'm hoping it'll burn into your head as well, and it's something that you will share with your staff, and it's a perception that you adopt. He said, look, most people who are calling and they ask about price, they're not sitting there with like a pad of paper and a pen and just like calling 7 places and writing down the price and saying, oh, I'm going to go to number 4 because they're $20 cheaper. Okay. Like, yeah, those people exist for sure, but it's a very, very small percentage. I mean, you're talking 1 to 5%. Like most people are not really like that. The reason they're asking about price is they don't know what else to say. They don't know how to start the conversation, right? So when somebody calls and they say, thank you for calling ABC Dental. How can I help you? Hi, do you guys do dental implants? Well, you're on our implants page, right? Like the guy went to the internet. He went to Google. He typed in dental implants. He found our website. He looked at our implants page. He looked at our case studies. We do implants. Why would you ask that? Doesn't know what to say. It's the first thing that comes to their head, right? So then the conversation gets passed to the receptionist, and the receptionist, they don't really know what to say either. They, most of them have never really been trained in sales or customer service. So first thing that pops into their head is, yeah, we do dental implants. Are you looking for implants? No, I called to order a pizza, right? Like, obviously, yes, I'm looking for implants, but they don't know what to say either. So then it goes back to the patient. The patient thinks, okay, how much do you guys charge? At this stage, the receptionist thinks, here we go again. It's another price shopper. I know this guy's not going to book. He's just wasting my time. And they don't notice it, but subconsciously, they actually adopt this attitude like this is a low value person, like it's just wasting my time. And their tone of voice changes, and the way they talk to the patient changes. And they talk to them as if like you're just an irritation. So they'll say something like, it really depends. Like it's maybe $3,400 a tooth. Okay, thanks, bye. Right. And then the receptionist thinks, see, I knew it. I could spot that this person was not going to book. I just knew, I've been in dentistry for long enough. I could spot that this person wasn't serious. Is that the case? 9 out of 10 times, no. The patient didn't know where else to take the conversation. Sometimes they'll say, I'm not really allowed to give you prices over the phone. It really depends. You have to come in and if you don't have any x-rays, it's going to cost X amount for x-rays and you have to do the consultation. And all the patient is hearing is, I don't really have time for you. You have to like jump through a bunch of hoops and you have to come down. You have to pay for all this stuff. And then maybe I'll tell you the price. And it comes across as like, I know the price. I just don't really want to tell you. Right. And it doesn't leave them with a very good first impression. The other thing that a lot of people think, when it comes to, why did they book the appointment? They think, oh, they're just not serious. Okay. Let me tell you something. Nobody calls a dental practice for fun. Okay. Like nobody out there is going to wake up one day and, they have perfect teeth and they like their smile and they just decide by whatever, for whatever reason, I'm really curious what Invisalign costs. I don't need it. I don't want to buy it. I'm not really that interested. I'm just really curious what it costs. they're not calling a dentist to make a friend. Okay. They want to buy dentistry. There's something that they don't like about their smile. There is a problem that they do want to fix. What they're not sure about is whether they should come to you or the dozens of other offices in the area, right? Because as a patient, they have a lot of options to pick from. You go on Google, you type in dentist near me, you're going to, they're everywhere. Okay. So it's not that they're not serious. It's that, that's not really what's going on. And I've actually have some personal experience with this. My wife had Invisalign done a couple of years back. And, we were in Toronto at the time. She went to a couple different places just to, inquire, like, how does it work? Everybody seems to offer Invisalign. How do you guys do it? What's the difference? She wasn't shopping around. She's just trying to become informed as a patient. It's a big procedure. It's going to take a lot of time to go through this. I want to educate myself to know what I'm getting involved in and who I think is going to give me the most value. So out of all the offices that she went to, she got very different quotes, like $4,500, $4,800, $5,000, all over the place. And in the end, she went with a practice that was more on the higher end. It was maybe $5,500, $6,000, something like that. And I had asked her, and by the way, she made this decision maybe a couple months later, like it might have taken 4 or 5 months before she decided she's going to finally pull the trigger and go ahead with it. And I asked her, like, why did you go with this practice? Like, what made you pick them? And she said, I really liked how these people made me feel. They were the only ones that took the time to really talk to me and educate me on, how it works. And they said, like, we only do Invisalign. Like, we're like, this is all we do. We're really specialized in it. So they really sold me on, like, they're, different from your average practice. They gave me a lot of great information. They were the only ones that ever followed up with her. There's no pressure. There was just, how is everything going? Are you still considering this? Is there anything we can do to help? And, they were just nice. They were helpful. And they're the only ones who ever said hello again. Okay. Now, if I went to the other 6, 7 offices that she visited, whatever it was, and I asked them, why do you think she didn't pick, why do you think Beth didn't pick your office? Okay. They would all say, oh, she's just price shopping. No, price wasn't that big of a concern. Oh, she's not serious. No, she did Invisalign, right? She just didn't do it at your office, right? So it's easy to come up with these excuses because it's like saying, it's not my fault. There's nothing I can do better. It's just a person. It's not a good patient. But the top practices don't approach this with that mentality. The real reason the patients don't book, okay, the real reason why some practices, it takes they'll only book 30% and some of them book 70, 80%. Number one, the staff can't communicate value. They can't, on that call, when I call the office, I'm not left with the sense of, like, why should I pick you? What makes you special? What makes you different? I have so many other options to pick from. What's unique about you? They're not really sure what to say or how to approach that conversation to leave that person feeling like this is the best choice. Okay. Because even if most people will call a few offices, I mean, wouldn't you? Like, you're going to look at a couple different products on Amazon before you buy one. You don't buy the first one you see. You're going to call in for a couple different businesses if you're, thinking of getting your car fixed. People, they're not really shopping around for who's cheapest. They're shopping around for who they think offers the most value. And if your staff can't communicate value, then it doesn't really give me a lot of reasons why I should pick you. Number 2 reason, and this applies mostly to cosmetic cases like veneers, Invisalign, implants, your staff never actually follow up with anybody. They just assume that if they don't book that appointment on the first call, that they must not be serious. Okay. And it's not true. Most people, they're not going to just call and, book themselves in for implants tomorrow or Invisalign. They're just gathering information. They're trying to think, like, how should I do this? When should I do this? How does it work? It might take a couple of months before they actually make a decision. It doesn't mean they're not serious. It just, and if you never follow up with them, but someone else does and makes them feel like they're, heard and appreciated and valued, they're probably going to go there instead. So I want to share some real examples, okay? Because we process, like I said, maybe 50, 60,000 patient calls a month, okay? We have a large team of people. We listen to the calls. We make sense of what happened on the call. And I want to share some real examples to give you guys a sense of what the average dental practice sounds like. And I want to preface this by saying we did not cherry pick like, the worst 1% of calls, like the 1 out of 1,000 that's just, horrendous for shock value. Okay, this is honestly how the average dental practice kind of sounds like. Okay, some, a little bit more extreme than others, but generally you're going to get a sense of like why some practices book 30% and why some of them book 70%. Now, if you are in the audience here, okay, you're a staff member, receptionist, manager, it's going to sound like I'm being very negative towards the staff, but I assure you, this story has a positive ending. I don't think it's the staff's fault. I think there's deeper problems here. So don't feel attacked. I don't think that receptionists are bad people or that they're trying to sabotage the business. But okay, so let's listen to some examples. So common thing we hear: unprofessional greeting. Or they just answer the phone with hello. Like, you'd be surprised how many calls we listen to each month where literally people just answer the phone, they just say hello. So let me play an example so you can, see these are real, and this isn't, 1 out of 1,000. It happens more often than you think.
Hello?
Hi, I'm trying to reach the dentist's office. I think I might have had the wrong number.
Right, so this happens all the time. Or, the problem is sometimes it doesn't sound like a friendly place, right? There's a difference if, let's say I call your office and you answer the phone with, "Thank you for calling ABC Dental. My name is Nick. How can I help you today?" Versus ABC Dental, this is Nick, right? Like, you could be saying the same words, but depending on how you talk and your tone of voice, it can convey very different messages. So often where a lot of these calls kind of start off wrong is when you listen to them, it almost sounds like, "I'm busy, I don't have time, what do you want?" Right? Another problem we hear all the time is staff talking to patients like it's just an annoying distraction. Like, "I'm busy, this is just another thing that's piled on my plate." And it makes the person feel like they're unwelcome, like you're just a burden. Like you're doing them a favor by, like they're doing you a favor by talking to you. So let's listen to one to see kind of like what this sounds like.
Oh, hi. So can I make a reservation for next Saturday?
Next Saturday?
Yeah.
Let me see. Yeah, okay. Can I call you back later? Because right now I'm busy. So I'll call you later and ask you some questions. Is that okay?
Oh, because I'm out already, so I'm not sure if I can receive your call because I'll be in the marketplace.
Oh, okay. So
like, should I call you back or like what is?
Okay, sure. Yeah, so you can call us back.
Right, so it's like, never ask their name. You patients are the lifeblood of the business. So you can, even if you're busy, you can take 30 seconds and say, "Look, I'm really sorry, I'm with another patient. Let me get your name. I'm going to call you back in 5 minutes." But if you talk to the patient like, "Oh, I'm just really busy," yeah, you call back later. Yeah, right. Do you think that patient called back later? No, they went to Google and they found 20 other practices they could go to, and one of them was happy to take their call. Here's another example. This is a case where the person was looking for veneers. And he's actually an existing patient, so he's calling in because he wants to get a quote on veneers. Now, have a listen. If you were in the shoes of this patient, does this practice kind of give you, would you book here? Like, would you actually book here for someone to talk to you this way?
Speaking.
Yeah, good morning. This is calling. And do you have a lot of patients that do like porcelain veneers for cosmetic reason?
Yeah, we do.
You do? Okay. Do you carry the bleach shades porcelain veneers?
I'm not sure the shades right now.
Is there a way you can ask the dentist? Like the bleach shade is not carried by all the dentists.
The dentist is not here right now, so that's why I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What about do you know the cost of it? I mean, the produced cost.
Not really, but like my colleague, she could call you back and let you know about all the details.
Okay. Can your colleague call me back today? Because I have to decide today. who to go with.
She's not here today. That's why.
Oof.
I mean, you can hear it in his voice, right? He's just like, oh my God, like I'm trying to give you money. And, it's like, what is this? So I don't think anyone's going to be surprised to learn he decided to get veneers somewhere else, right? So sometimes the problem is they're not following up with patients, right? So this happened, like this next call, this example, this happens a lot. And generally when we talk to the dentists, or to their staff, they say like, no, I mean, if they leave a voicemail, no, we get back to people right away. And we always tell the dentist, like, how do you know that? Do you verify that? Like, how do you know that? And we share a bunch of examples like this, and we say, if that was the case, then why am I hearing messages like this one?
Sorry we missed your call. If you could leave us a message with your name, number, and reason for calling, we will get back to you as soon as we can.
Hi, this is. It's my third time calling. I hope someone can call me back at. I'd like to make an appointment for my father. Thank you. Bye-bye.
So she called 3 times over like a week. No one followed up with her. In the end, guess what? She booked her father for a different practice. And this was an existing patient. Like, so she liked the practice. Like, she liked the dentist, it was a really nice dentist, but she eventually just got fed up with, how she's treated. Like she felt unappreciated. It's like, I'll just take my business elsewhere. Sometimes the problem is, people are calling in, they're looking for information, and the person just isn't really helpful or engaged, right? It just leaves the patient feeling, again, it's like they either don't really know or they just, kind of don't really care. So let's look at an example. So this client bought the Zoom whitening system. Okay, so this was, a few years back, and they had hired us to, promote Zoom and get more teeth whitening patients. So we built landing pages and campaigns and all this stuff to get more people calling for teeth whitening. But, the dentist came back after a couple of months. It's like, I'm not really seeing results. We're not really seeing, I'm not sure what the heck you guys are doing for me, but I'm not seeing the results. And then when we started digging through it, because we were seeing people were clicking on their page, it looks like they were calling. We couldn't understand why they're not booking patients. And then we played one of these calls for him to say, maybe this is why you're not booking teeth whitening patients.
Speaking, how may I help you?
Hi there. Can I do you guys do in-office whitening?
Yes, we do.
What do you guys use or do?
Pardon?
What do you guys use or do? Like, what kind of whitening system is it?
I don't know. The hygienists have their own whitening system that they use. You would have to come in for a consult with them.
Is there anything available today for a procedure and consult?
No, our hygienist is on holidays, and she returns next Tuesday, but she's fully booked until the 13th.
Okay, I'll call back.
Okay, thank you.
Didn't get their name, didn't really care. First of all, when we actually followed up with this, there wasn't just one hygienist. Like, somebody could have seen him. But it was closer to the end of the day. The receptionist like, look, I already got my shoes on. I'm just trying to go home. And, end of the day is going to be in 20 minutes. I don't care. Right. And this is how a lot of those calls were handled. Is just, I don't really know how it works. In this particular practice, we had one patient call and he asked, how does Zoom compare to like Crest white strips, because if I go to Costco and buy those, like, I'm assuming this is better. Right. And the receptionist just told them, I don't know. I use Crest white strips. I think they're fine, right? So obviously the person didn't book, right? But when the dentists are trying to figure out, like, hey, why is the marketing not working? I'm spending all this money trying to promote teeth whitening. Why am I not getting patients? Like, maybe this is why, right? In this example, this person called for a root canal, right? So they were trying to figure out, like, can I get this done here, or do I need to go to an endodontist? So have a listen, put yourself in the shoes of this patient. Like, would you have booked here if this was the experience you got?
Good morning. Speaking.
Hi there. I have some questions that I'm hoping you can help me with.
Sure.
Is it just a general dentist, or is there an endodontist there as well?
No, it's just a general dentist.
Okay. And do they do root canals and things like that as well?
Do they Can you just hold the line 1 second, please?
Yes, of course.
Thanks.
5 minutes later.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
No problem.
Yes, we do root canals, but it depends on the tooth and how many canals and that type of thing. So,
Is it more common to go see an endodontist for that or no?
again, it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, so it's like I just don't care. It depends. First of all, that dentist, this particular dentist, is very experienced. I mean, he's not an endodontist, but he does root canals, right? Another way they could have approached that is to say, absolutely, we do a lot of root canals. Like you could use an endodontist; they're specialists. They have more complicated cases, but honestly, like 9 out of 10 people who need that, we get that done here. We can do a free consultation if it turns out to be a very complicated issue. We can refer you, or you can just ask, like, what makes you, feel you need a root canal? What happened? Are you going to a dentist? Like, there was just no engagement. It was just like, I just want to get you off the phone, right? This happens all the time. Sometimes the problem is the staff's just not really knowledgeable with what the practice even offers. So I'll show you kind of this is an extreme case, but it's a funny one. So this particular dentist, they wanted to promote Invisalign. We were spending maybe like $2,000 a month trying to push like Invisalign ads and things like that on social media and Google ads and things like that. And, the dentist came back to us like frustrated, feeling like, I'm not really getting any patients for Invisalign. I don't know what the heck you guys do, but I don't think it's worth it. And this was early on when we started investigating, like, we don't know what's happening. Like, we're seeing a lot of people interested in this. I'm not really sure why you're not getting patients though. So this was at the time we started recording calls, and we played this call for her, and we said, maybe this is why you're not booking patients.
You're checking for braces, you said?
Yeah, but like the invisible ones that you just put in, I forgot what they're called.
Invisalign?
Yeah, that.
We don't do Invisalign braces at our office.
They did Invisalign. They were doing it for years. This was like a new receptionist that I worked there for 3 months. And for the last 3 months, every time someone called about this, she, rather than asking like, hey, do we actually do this? She just said, I don't think we do that here. And patients, a lot of them were kind of confused because they thought maybe I called the wrong place. She would refer them to their competitor across the street. And this was happening for months. And when we showed them this, it's like, you guys are giving us so much flack that our marketing sucks and this sucks and we're doing a bad job. It's like, this has been going on for 3 months, right? Now, this is more of an extreme example, but variations of this happens all the time where they're just not knowledgeable or combination of particularly care, and it doesn't leave people feeling very confident. And lastly, I can give you thousands of examples. I mean, we have thousands of these calls, but we'll save this one for last just to kind of get a move on. Patients call, there's not really any sympathy. Like, they might be in a lot of pain, they might be dealing with a lot of issues, and the way that people talk to them is like, they just don't care, right? So this particular case, this was an existing patient. I believe they had implants done or some sort of surgery, and they thought they had an infection. They called back a couple of days later. Well, I'll let you guys listen to it, but see what happened.
Thank you for calling. Speaking.
Hi. I'd like to know if you have anything available for me to come in today on an emergency. I believe something's wrong with my teeth really bad, both top and bottom left. I think I have an infection because I'm throwing up. My ears are bothering me on my left side.
The only day I have is Wednesday.
What am I going to do for pain then? If I have an infection.
Honestly, you can take Advil or whatever works for you for pain until today, because I'm fully booked today.
Okay, thanks.
The dentist of this office is like one of the nicest people I've ever met. He would have skipped lunch, he would have stayed late, he would have seen this patient, never even knew this had happened, right? So patient in the end decided to just go to a different office that appreciated them, and dentist didn't even know that. Like, it was kind of just swept under the rug. I've listened to, just last month, there was a case where, somebody's calling to cancel an appointment. There's a screaming baby in the background. The lady's trying to explain, my babysitter canceled on me. I have nobody to watch my son. I have to cancel the appointment. And the receptionist said, like, well, there's going to be a charge. You really should think about whether you want to cancel it. It's not going to look good for your file. And, there's a baby in the background. This lady's like, just cancel the appointment. Like, do you think I want to be sitting here with a screaming baby? Right? Like, are you a human being? Right? There's no sympathy of like, I'm really sorry to hear that. It sounds like you're dealing with a lot. Let me see what I can do. They just assume, it's like, oh, this is going to ruin my schedule. It's going to ruin my day. But sometimes people have legitimate reasons why they can't make it, right? And, if I am at an office that shows me no real sympathy or care, why would I keep going there? Okay. So most dentists, okay, they think this isn't happening in their office. Every office manager I have ever spoken with, and I have spoken with hundreds, none of them think this could ever happen in their office, because I always hear, oh, no, we have a great team. People, like, patients love our staff. Like, I'm in the office every day. I would know if this is happening. Like, I'm close. I would hear if something like this was going on. And we kind of believed them in the beginning, right? But we said, hey, look, we need to track your calls so we can report on if our work actually drives more business, right? Like, I don't want to send you a report about website clicks. I want to see if this actually gets you patients. So are you okay if I record your calls? They're all okay. A month or two goes by. We start sending them some of these examples. And this is the kind of emails we would get back. So this particular dentist said, I'm absolutely appalled by this. I cannot believe this is my staff. I have so many questions. I blurred out a bunch of stuff because I don't want to, identify anybody here. But why I share this example is this dentist was very adamant that what was wrong is there's something wrong with their marketing. Okay. Their staff is great. They're really well trained. Like, there's no issues with this. And then once we started playing them call after call after call, and would say, would you book here if someone talked to you this way? He was really shocked. Another practice, said, oh my God, this is absolutely not the way I want my business handled. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll address this ASAP. Again, another client that was just very adamant, like, I just need marketing. There's something off with my SEO. The last guy I hired, I don't think he knew what he was doing. But no, my staff is amazing. My staff is great. Like, if 10 people called, no, 9 of them would come in for an appointment. And I would always ask them, like, how do you know that? You don't record any calls. You don't track anything. How do you know that? Oh, no. I know. I would know if something like this was going on. Office managers weren't any different. They all felt like, no, I hired the staff. I trained them. I oversee them. Like, no, I would notice if something like this was going on. This office manager, after a month, came back to us and said, wow, that call was very difficult to listen to. I noticed receptionist going through some rough days lately, not to excuse her mannerisms by any means, but that was probably the worst customer service call I've heard on her part in the last 2 years that she's worked here. But here's the thing. They weren't tracking calls. So it's like, what do you mean the worst you've heard in 2 years? You haven't listened to any calls, right? This is not the first time this has happened. This is just the first time we brought it to your attention. This has been going on from like day one. This practice, by the way, after about 18 months, they went from 10 patients a month to 50. And I can tell you it wasn't our marketing. Probably it helped a little bit. We made them a nice website and all this stuff, this was a couple of years back, but I think most of it was, they just started becoming aware of how patients were really being treated. So you need to be conscious of when a patient calls you, how do they perceive your practice? Okay. Because it's a phone. I can't see your face. When I talk to your team, do I picture you like this? Like, you're happy, you're friendly, you're excited to get me as a patient. Is this the impression I get? I'm going to come here, I'm going to be happy. The people I'm working with are happy. Or am I picturing you like this, where it's like, I'm busy, what do you want? Oh, root canal? I don't know, it depends. Like, or am I picturing you like this, where it's like, I don't have time. Okay. Now, here's the thing. I don't think it's your staff's fault. Because up to this point, I've been sort of like, it's feel like I'm really bashing your team. And, a lot of dentists feel this, like, oh, I just don't have the right people. It's so hard to find good people. I actually don't think that's the problem at all. I think, very rarely does somebody just wake up in the morning and say, how can I screw over the dental practice I work at today? Sure, people like that exist, but it's very rare. Like 99% of staff out there, they're trying to do a good job. They are good people. But the problem is they're in a business with no real systems, no accountability, no training. It's an environment that really just brings out the worst in people. Because when you don't have accountability, the issue is it's easy to get away with sweeping things under the rug, right? Every time something bad happens, usually the experience a receptionist would have is somebody comes and yells at him or her, right? It's a really tough job. You're dealing with a lot. The phone's ringing. You're trying to check out a patient. The doctor's trying to shove some piece of paper in your face. Oh, I got to rebook this guy for another time. There's a lot to juggle. Like that job is legitimately quite difficult. And most receptionists, if you think about it, when they get hired, there's no systems, there's no training. They get shown, here's the desk, here's a chair, here's the phone, do your job, right? They're set up to fail. So when you don't have an accountability system, you don't have good systems, and you don't, like, your business isn't very well organized, it's easy to sweep things under the rug. And you learn over time, it's like, don't bring anything up because, the doctor's just going to yell at you. But there's another thing that happens too. What happens is every time they do a good job, it goes unappreciated, unnoticed, unrewarded, right? So if you're in that practice for 5-10 years, all you learn is hide all the problems, because all that's going to happen is, doctors are just going to chew you out and freak out on you. And don't bother doing, like, following up with patients or, rebooking somebody who canceled their appointment. Why go above and beyond? Nobody's going to notice. Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to appreciate it. Like how many staff members I've talked to where they said, if only like once in a while you just bought me a cup of coffee, something to just show like, hey, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for doing this, right? So most offices, what the dentist doesn't realize is they've built a business that just brings out the worst in people, right? If you have good systems, you have accountability systems, you train people, you reward them, like all these things are in place, you can take an average person and turn them into a superstar, okay? If you don't, you're going to get the worst out of people. So all of us have the ability to be amazing or terrible, right? It depends on kind of like what environment you're in. So ultimately the patient, why do some practices book 70%, 80%, some of them book 20%? Patients are going to pick the practice that they like and trust the most, right? So how do you get them to trust you? How do you get them to like you and trust you? So one of the main things, we would focus on is get good reviews, right? If I see your practice and you have a lot of good reviews, you have a really strong reputation, a lot of patients really like you, to have a good experience, they come there, it's going to significantly increase the chance that I pick your practice. I mean, think of it, like if I'm going on Amazon, let's say, I bought here a external hard drive, okay? And, you go and you type in external hard drive on Amazon, you're going to find 100 options. One of them has 500 reviews. 4.9 out of 5. One of them has 20. Why would I ever buy the one with 20? Maybe it's better, right? But I don't know, right? I'm not sure which one's better. They both look the same to me. They both look like they're identical. I'll go with the one that most people trust. So reviews are a big one. Patient testimonials are really powerful. If I come to your website, I see a bunch of people who are singing your praises, right? They say, oh, it's a wonderful experience. I like how these people treat me. I've been coming here for 10 years. That's also very powerful, right? You might, give them something useful, informative. If let's say they're looking for implants, some of our dentists, what they do, they give them little guides like, hey, you're looking for implants, here's everything you need to know about it. They took some time to create useful material so that if a patient was looking for this, it educates them. And it's not like a sales pitch. It's like, look, there's everything you need to know. If you, in the end, decide to come with us, we'd love to have you. But as long as you find this useful, we're happy, right? But the main thing, you're going to get people to like you and trust you is you need to leave them with a great first impression on that call. And you need to invest in teaching your team on how to do sales and customer service, because this is something that a lot of people haven't really been trained all that well on. So let's quickly go through, like, what does good customer service sound like? What are those practices that are in the top 10% doing differently? So first of all, like I said before, warm and friendly greeting. There's a very big difference if I answer the phone, I say, thank you for calling RevUp Dental. My name is Nick. How can I help you? Versus RevUp Dental, right? You could say the same thing, but again, it's like how you say it is going to really make or break that conversation. Most people are going to call in, they're going to ask a question. They're going to say, are you accepting patients? How much do you charge for Invisalign? Do you guys do dental implants? Like something like that. They're always going to ask a question. The best way to handle that is you answer their question with a question as well, and you start to take control of the conversation. So what that sounds like is, like, I'll use my earlier example. Hi, do you guys do dental implants? Absolutely, we do a lot of implant cases every year. Our dentist is like, he's done thousands of them. I'm assuming you're looking for implants, correct? Yeah, how much do you guys charge? Sure, I'd be happy to help you. That share you some information about, what it typically costs. Can I ask you a couple of questions? I just want to kind of understand your situation. Obviously it depends. It depends on what your situation is. Most people are going to say, sure, right? And then you can go into discovery questions. Or another way to shift the power is to just say, absolutely, yeah, we're accepting new patients. Happy to help you with that. Who do I have the pleasure of speaking with? What's your name? My name is Nick, by the way. Most people are going to give you their name, right? But what you don't realize is at that point, now I'm asking them the question. So if the patient's asking questions and you just answer and then ask a question, like, the conversation goes nowhere, because they don't really know what they want either. They're looking for you guys to kind of like take them by the hand and like lead them somewhere. So you answer their question with a question, you shift the power, then you go into discovery questions. Discovery questions are you missing one tooth or multiple teeth? Or are you calling for yourself or somebody else? When did this happen? Did you get in a bar fight last week, right? Like, how did you lose the tooth? You go into different questions, and it does a couple of things. So one, it buys you time because you get to now control the conversation, and you ask them questions, you learn more about them. Number two, it makes the patient feel like this is the only practice I've ever called that took the time to actually get to know me a little bit. And they might not think of that consciously, but they'll subconsciously feel it. They'll just feel like there's something about these guys, I just like them more because they're talking about you. They're trying to get to understand you, and people like that. It also gives you really easy opportunities to build rapport with them, because people will say things like, you find out that they're looking for Invisalign because they're going to get married in 3 months and they want to look nice for their photos. And you can say, oh, where are you getting married? Or congratulations, that's amazing. Or maybe they just, moved to the area, and you ask them, like, where'd you move from? How are you finding this place? It gives you very easy opportunities to build like a human connection with the person. At some point, you have to answer their question. And my philosophy is just be really open about costs. But look, you're looking for an implant. I've seen it in this town go for as low as, $3,200, could be like $6,000 and up. What's going to affect the price? A couple of things. So one, depends on your oral health, right? So some people come in and they have a very simple case. They're generally very healthy. They've taken good care of their teeth. It's a very easy procedure. Some people come in, they've been chain smoking for 30 years, right? Like, they're not in good health. So we can't even do the implant. We have to fix a lot of things with their gums, the bone, there's bone grafting, there's a lot of stuff. So I can't just give you a price because, you might come in and we find out that there's a bunch of other things we need to do for you before we can do an implant. And then you're going to think I'm trying to swindle you, right? Because I said, oh, it's about 3,000, and then it turns out it's more. I can also give you the worst case scenario, and then you're going to think that we're, kind of a rip off and we charge a lot. But it might turn out that if I actually got a chance to see you, that you actually have a very easy case. So I'm not really sure. It ranges on this. I would talk about the experience of the dentist. Our dentist has done implants for 20 years, done thousands of them. Sure, there's other dentists that might do it cheaper, but you might be the third patient they've experimented on, right? So you pay for it. Depends on the type of implant, right? There's cheaper implants, there's more expensive ones. I don't want to put an implant in your mouth that a year later you're gonna be at the Thanksgiving dinner and it falls out of your mouth, right? And you come back to me and you say, what the heck did I pay you for, right? So there's ways you can talk about price, but make it fun and interesting and helpful, and genuinely educate the patient. And you want to sing the praises of the office. Our dentist is really great at this. Like, he's done thousands of cases. We've had dentists where, they teach other dentists, and not once has the staff ever said, like, oh, you're looking for Invisalign? Our dentist teaches courses on Invisalign, right? So he's the dentist other people come to learn. Or they say, oh, our doctor's really gentle. Like, he's really good with kids. A lot of people come in nervous and like they really love coming here. Say something positive about the office, right? You're not like, it's not about taking like a pizza order. This is an opportunity to kind of, communicate some value of like why they would be, in good hands if they come here and how they're going to be appreciated. Those little things make a big impact. So we analyzed in September 56,000 new patient calls, because we wanted to see, does this actually make a difference? Are these 5 steps, do they sound nice in theory, but like it's just nonsense, or do they really matter? So we looked at those 5 steps. So when we analyzed those 56,000 calls, we looked at, did they do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So what impact did it have on bookings? If a receptionist did not do the steps, right? The greeting wasn't particularly warm. It was just like, hey, ABC Dental, whatever. They didn't do the shift the power or discovery questions. Booking rate was 33.8%. Okay, so you need 3 leads to get 1 patient. If they did some of the steps, like they're learning, they're trying to apply what they're learning, but they're giving a good effort. Like they're definitely trying to do what we're teaching them to do. Booking rate shot up to 59.2%, right? Almost double. If on the calls, and there's a few thousand where the particular receptionist did all the steps, like by the book, okay? Booking rate was 76.7%. So we have all these clients like spending thousands of dollars on SEO and websites and all this nonsense. And it's like, guys, if you just follow basic steps, you can learn in 10 minutes, okay? You can double the booking rate. This is the difference between a practice that makes $1 million a year versus one that makes 2.5. It's not external things. It's how your staff talk to people. So very few patients call around because they're trying to find the cheapest dentist. People call around because they're trying to figure out who offers the most value. If your team doesn't know how to communicate value, patients are going to see you as a commodity. It's the same reason why people will go and buy a really expensive pair of shoes, but then when it comes to the socks, they're going to go to Walmart and buy a 3-pack for $10, right? Because the socks are commodity. They're just it's utility. But the shoes are nice. It's something that has an emotional connection with me. People are not cheap. Think of how many people go and buy the latest iPhone. Right? How many students live paycheck to paycheck? They have thousands of dollars of student loan debts, but they got to have the latest MacBook. It's not because they don't have the money or they don't. It's nothing to do with that. It's they don't see the value, right? You can't communicate value, they see you as a commodity. So what do you need to do to track? What do you need to track and improve if you want to become one of those practices that's in the top 10%? So first of all, you need a system of accountability. And the best way, how we started is we started recording the calls and listening to them. And we ended up building a system around it. But before I get into kind of what we track, I want to tell you that we did this all with an Excel spreadsheet. This is not meant to be a sales pitch of like, hey, buy our software. Like, I don't particularly care. We started doing this manually. Like, it's got a nice interface, but at the end of the day, you could do this with a pen and paper. But I want you to focus on what to track and how to use it, right? So we look at, how much money do we spend on marketing this month? How many new patients called, right? Like, how many people called and said, hey, I have found you on Google. Are you guys accepting patients? What percentage of those actually got booked? How are existing patients handled? Everyone's trying to focus on new patients. Like, if I don't have a good experience when I come to you, if I'm an existing patient, I'm not going to keep coming back either. I'm not going to keep coming back. So there's no point in signing up more patients if you sign up 5, but you lose 3 on the back end and you don't even realize. How many calls get missed? You'd be shocked to see that the average practice, when we start tracking their stats, they miss about 25 to 30% of calls or more. 1 out of 3 calls doesn't get picked up. And this happens during business hours when they're open. People don't call you at 9 o'clock at night, that's not when calls are missed. They're missed during the day. Now, that's not because the staff are twiddling their thumbs. It's there's just a lot of chaos. They're busy. Like things fall through the cracks. But you need to pay attention to that. You need to make sure that there's a system in place to call these people back. Even if it's a minute or 2 later, it's important. How are cancellations handled? If somebody calls to cancel, does the staff even offer them another appointment? Oh, you can't make Wednesday, your babysitter canceled. I'm sorry to hear that. That's really tough. How does next week look for you? Does that work? If they say, oh, I'm not sure, I work shifts, I got to talk to my boss, I'm not really sure what my schedule is. If they don't call back on Monday, do you guys call back? Do you know? Right? So this is what we would track. Do we get any complaints? Has anyone called to, get their files because they moved to a different dentist? Did we do a bad job at anything? Did we get a bad review? How many opportunities are we really missing? We then break it down to the staff. Like, how is each staff member performing? So there's different staff members. How are they booking patients? Often we would find, there's 3 receptionists, one books 65%, one books 30%, one books 12%. And what would shock the clients is like the one who booked 12%, they thought she was the best one. It's like, why? Well, she just knew how to schmooze the dentist every day, right? So the dentist doesn't look at the data, when they're basing their opinion on their team. They're just looking at who they think is doing the best job. And sometimes, it's not accurate, right? How good are they at rebooking cancellations? Is one person actually going above and beyond and dealing with this better? What's everyone's strengths and weaknesses? And it's not to punish them. Is you try to figure out where the weaknesses are so you can train them better, so you can help them understand where things aren't going well. What services are people looking for? You might want to do a lot of Invisalign, but if everybody's searching for extractions and veneers, I mean, it's like saying, I want to go fishing. I want to catch a lot of bass. It's like, okay, but if you're fishing in a lake where 90% of the fish are pike, you're not going to catch the bass, right? So you need to align what you market and what you focus on based on what people want to buy in that area. We look at reviews, how are you doing versus your competition? Are you getting more reviews? Are they getting more reviews? Or is your staff even sending a review request, right? What's happening on that front? What happens with new patients? How are they handled? What do they call about? Who do they talk to? All the little details. How are existing patients handled? And complaints, there's a lot of complaints that get swept under the rug. People calling into, there's another office who's trying to get the x-rays of the patient because the patient didn't have a good experience. People leaving voicemails because I've tried to follow up with you 3 times. Nobody's calling me back. What the heck? You think I'm going to follow up 4 or 5 times? Like, I'm just going to go somewhere else. Staff are unsympathetic to patients, like the Tylenol call. What am I supposed to do? Well, I don't know, take some Tylenol, whatever. I'm busy today, right? These are things that dentists are shocked when they see that this was, going on day to day in their practice. Now, the one thing we do that, you can't really do this with a spreadsheet, but we track what the averages are. So we look at major metrics like what's your new patient booking rate, existing patients, cancellations, that kind of stuff. And we compare it to hundreds of offices in US and Canada. And we help people understand, like, are you doing well? Are you not doing well? Like, what are other people in your area doing better than you that you can learn from? Obviously, we don't disclose like specific practices, but we aggregate the data and we help people understand, like, where on this totem pole do you stand? Sometimes people are really good at one thing, but they're really struggling with something different. Everybody has different challenges. But if you want to learn more, we've got a lot of free videos on YouTube. If you just go to YouTube and you type in RevUp Dental, we interview a lot of very successful multimillionaire dentists who, talk about systems and processes. We interview business people, coaches. We share a lot of stuff for marketing because mostly now we've gone out of marketing and mostly into data. We share kind of like how we did a lot of this stuff. So, and many of it you could do in-house with your staff, like how to improve your SEO, how to run different types of campaigns, how to get more reviews. We give all that away for free. But if you want to learn more about us and reach out to us, you can also check out our website, revupdental.com. We've got case studies, interviews, that kind of stuff there too. But I want to thank you all for your time. Sorry if I went a little bit longer than expected. I hope you found it useful. And yeah, thank you so much.